Well, good evening. This is a continuation of the planning board public hearing regarding the outdoor adventure zone application submitted by the Tyrell Development Company. The purpose of this public hearing is to permit the planning board to hear the public's comment regarding the application, and specifically to hear public comment on the parking study and the parking study peer review. These two documents were posted on the town website following the public hearing on November 24th. Public hearings are recorded. The planning board will review the public comments as part of its deliberations and fact finding. Public comment are an important part of the application review process. Community input helps the board to better understand citizens' concerns, and where appropriate, the board may apply site plan review regulations to impose reasonable and lawful conditions on approval to mitigate identified impacts. The board is receiving comment. The board will not engage in debate, but may ask clarifying questions as necessary for the record. At the conclusion of the public comment portion of this hearing, the planning board will discuss and determine whether it has sufficient information to close the public hearing on the adventure zone application and to begin deliberations at a date certain. If the planning board votes in favor of closing the public hearing, the board's deliberations will begin unless public hearing is continued to a date certain. If during deliberations the board determines that additional information is needed, it may vote to exit deliberations and reopen the public hearing. The board must issue a final decision on the adventure zone no later than January 17, 2026. Once deliberations have begun, the board members will speak only among themselves. Deliberations are held in public. Any member of the public may make a comment and can address the planning board chair and not the applicant. At the end of the public comment period, the chair will offer the applicant time to respond to any comments or questions from the public. We encourage members of the public to share their input during the public hearing process and thank those who participate. Participation in a public hearing is done in person. No phone calls or texts are accepted in a public hearing. A Zoom link to the public hearing may be provided to watch and listen. No Zoom participation is permitted. Any member of the public may mail or email their questions or comments to the town office in sufficient time to be recognized during the hearing. The chair has set a time in general of 2 minutes for each member of the public to address the board. Comments from the gallery are not allowed, and if you want to make a comment, you must come to the microphone, tell us who you are, where you live, and whether you represent a party to the application. Abutters to the project site will be allowed to speak first. The public wants to know how your thoughts could help the planning board evaluate this application. Its assessment and decision with respect to this application are limited to and will be based on voter-approved ordinances, regulations, and the state law. I will open the planning board hearing with a roll call.
Rob Wilson, member.
Mike Capel, member.
Bill Spence, member.
Catherine Brennan, member.
Morgan Dean, member.
John Racine, member.
Rich Rita, select board ex officio, and I will recuse myself and come back when we the public hearing for the zoning amendments.
Laura Spector, Morgan attorney.
Council is here, and we have alternates.
Alan Burko, alternate.
Margaret Turner, alternate.
Hello, Margaret. Good to see you there. And Liz Emerson, our town planner. Now, we received a significant document from the applicant's attorney, Mr. Hastings. It has some very interesting information in it, and I would like Madam Secretary to read it into the record.
Okay. Following up on our conversation last week and in anticipation of the next public hearing on the Adventure Zone site plan, the applicant proposes as conditions of approval to ensure adequate off-street parking within 1,000 feet of the site to 1, refresh the striping of the west side lots per the original plan space counts. 2, update the striping of the east side lot per the site plan to reflect the actual current number of spaces. Note, the actual number of spaces exceeds what is shown on the original plan count due to the removal of some islands. 3, Pave and stripe the current unpaved parking areas containing 21, 7, and 14 spaces in the west side lots. 4. Relocate the loading unloading zone shown in the plan on the east side lot to reclaim the 6 spaces it is displacing to the extent practical. If relocation of the loading unloading zone is impractical, the applicant will add at least 6 spaces to the newly paved areas in the west side lots. 5. Add signage to help direct vehicles to available parking areas. My understanding is that the site plan will be revised to appropriately note the foregoing conditions, each of which would need to be satisfied prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy for proposed improvements. Please let me know if you have any questions. Philip M. Hastings. Cleveland Waters and Bass.
Well, we have copies of that to add to my file.
It's in your email.
It's
My email.
in your email, and I think there's one sitting on the table, and I would
Thank
ask, Steve, if you would post it on the town website.
Hey, can I just offer a little background?
You may.
So this arises because Attorney Hastings called me because his clients called him about this conversation that's been going back and forth between the VHB and the review about parking and whether or not the Adventure Zone should be required to have this plan to build these additional 48 spaces. That was part of Nick's review, part of Liz's recommendation. And VHB has come back and said, no, we don't think you should have to do that. And so when I was talking to Phil, I said, you know, the board and I have been talking about parking, and I know some of the concerns that the board has expressed is that some of the parking that's shown on the plan is not consistent with what's actually out there on the ground. And I know we've talked about specifically some parking that's shown on the plan that doesn't exist out there. And what I've done is I've taken a portion of the site plan and I've just cut out this portion of the parking and done some highlighting for you. So the pink line is the 1,000-foot line from the Adventure Zone. And the yellow highlighted spots, and I have copies for people. The yellow highlighted spots are the spots that aren't actually constructed out there in the west parking lot. So I explained all that to Attorney Hastings, and the gist of his email is they're gonna build those parking lots that aren't actually built, the ones that are highlighted in yellow. And then I said, and as I look on the plan, the east parking lot seems to have 65 spaces, but everyone's referring to it as having 72 spaces, and that doesn't make any sense. So what he's saying in his email is there's actually 72 spaces because of some things that have been sort of moved around. And then I said, and nothing is striped. There's just sort of these vast areas of parking. So the other point he's making is that they're going to stripe those spaces in those parking spots. So that's what his email is in response to, is a conversation I had with him. It didn't come out of nowhere. And it was, I wanted to give you guys that background so you didn't think that this was just a sort of an email in the middle of the night out of nowhere. I also wanted to give you a visual representation of what he was talking about, because without this, his email makes absolutely no sense. So that is what his email is about. Obviously, whether or not you think this is sufficient is entirely up to the board. But I did want you to know what he was talking. And you're here obviously to say whether I'm right or wrong.
No, I just want.
You may.
Just to add one additional comment to that, those 3 lots that are highlighted in yellow, they are not paved. They do exist and they are used as dirt parking lots. They are used for parking today. They exist as dirt lots, not paved lots. So we are proposing to pave them. So I just want to be clear, those aren't tree covered or anything like that. They do currently exist as open spaces where people do park. And so, but we're proposing to pave them, stripe them according to what we've outlined there. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
And the 72 lots I can provide, I meant to provide it, email it earlier, but the 72 space count is based on aerial photography that shows the most recent striping on the lot from just a couple of years ago, where you count that's where the 72 comes from. So we did verify that there are 72 existing spaces in the east side lot. And we looked at the striping, older striping for the west side lots, and the striping there does conform with what is in the plan for those paved areas. So when we restripe, it will have those number of spaces if and when we restripe those lots. So those numbers will match up.
Okay, I went to the east side lot on the weekend. There was a hockey tournament in progress. It was full, no spaces were available. I counted 65 vehicles. I don't think that it's really useful to, fight over how many spaces are there, your number, our number. But I couldn't find 72 spaces.
Were you counting the 6 spaces again up against Town Square? There's 6 spaces towards
Yeah.
Town
Some
Square.
of which are handicapped.
Yes, that's where the handicap parking in that area is currently
Right, you're
located, but there are,
counting-
those are parking spaces in the east side lot.
Okay.
So those are often left out of when people are counting spaces.
And
Which is- yeah.
there were a couple
Yeah.
of commercial vehicles there. I don't know whether that's used
Yeah.
by town businesses and whether there's deliveries and comings and goings.
Well, there's a
there.
commercial load, Tim, you know it better than
Yeah,
I,
for
but commercial load and unload area there, but they're not supposed to be taking up customer parking spaces.
Okay, no,
Yeah.
as I said, it's
Yeah.
not so much that,
Yeah.
it's not important.
Yeah.
Whether it's this number or that
Right.
number, they're close enough and
Yeah.
they're, in my opinion, approximations.
And I will also point out that, it is winter time, snow does have an effect, but for the outdoor adventure center, that will not be operating when there's snow on the ground and there are snowbanks there. Though aerial course, mini golf, those will not be wintertime activities. So that will
Okay.
not have the same parking effect in those winter months as it does in the summer months.
And then when big delivery trucks arrive, where will they do their business?
We've identified a way to have a loading and unload area. We can show that and if we move further along here, we can show where we propose to relocate a load unload zone. And to be able to provide that as well.
Okay. Thank you. I should say, as I said in the opening remarks, that abutters may speak first out of members of the public. Are there any abutters present who wish to make a comment? I recognize,
David LaFever. My name is David LaFever. I'm an attorney and I'm representing the Board of Selectmen as an abutter in this case. I'm surprised that there's all this communication happening and the selectmen aren't involved in it, quite frankly, as the party who appears to be the one raising these issues. I was unaware of any of this until just now. So in terms of the applicant's proposed conditions of approval, that is not the stuff of a conditional approval. What you need to see is a revised plan that shows everything that they're saying they're going to do. Those plans need to be made available to the public so that we can see them and so we can comment on them and have that discussion before you close the public hearing and before you move on to your deliberations. I am going to throw some numbers at the board because I went through this exercise just yesterday. According to the applicant's traffic study, and if I get this wrong, somebody will correct me, I'm sure. They're saying there are 540 spaces total, okay? And that's broken down to 72 spaces on the east side and then 468 spaces on the west side. In their study, they say that 314 of those spaces, total 540, are allocated to the Snowy Owl, to Black Bear, and to the ice arena. And they break it down as 82 spaces for Snowy Owl, 160 for Black Bear, and 72 for the ice arena. Which means there are remaining 216 spaces that are allocated to the town square. You follow me, everybody, so far? So there's,
With 226.
okay, plus or minus,
yeah,
226.
I
Okay.
did this exercise as well.
So I attended law school because I couldn't do the math And if my numbers are incorrect, I won't be offended if people correct me. All right, so 226. So I did this additional exercise. I took a look at the town square tax cards. There are 16 tax cards for that property. And the land uses that are within the town square are generally classified roughly as restaurant, retail, office, and then what I would characterize as a residential or a lodging style use, because there's condos and then there's hotels. All right. Within your zoning ordinance, you have the parking requirements for these types of land uses. And what they are is, if you have a restaurant, you have to have 1 parking space per 75 square feet of restaurant. If you have, a 3-bedroom condo, you need to have 2 parking spaces. If you have an office space, you need to have 2.5 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet. And if you have a retail space, you need to have 5 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet of retail space. So what I did is, looking at the tax cards and looking at the uses that are there, how they're categorized in the area, I came up with a calculation of 320. That would be the number of parking spaces that would have to be available for I keep saying Village Square, but you all know I'm talking about Town Square. That would be the number of spaces that have to be available for Town Square based on your own parking calculations. And we know that there are only 216, or correct me, 226. And if we assume that I'm wrong by 100 spaces, you still have net 0 spaces available in this parking area for the adventure zone. And this is why, so when we were here last time, I raised 2 issues about the west side parking area. One is we have some skepticism that the actual number of spaces are there, but that would be resolved with a revised plan that shows the actual number of spaces. The other issue the selectmen raise is, what is the actual burden or use on those remaining 226 spaces? And that's not really part of the study. And I'll say this, we should be planning for this adventure zone to be a success. We should be planning for the adventure zone to be a destination location regionally for people to come to. And if that happens, what'll happen is that will put an additional burden, not just on the parking for that use, but all of the other uses that are already there, because correspondingly, they'll be successful too. Based on my parking calculation that I've done, looked at the existing uses in the town square and the parking demand that is on that per your zoning ordinance, there just isn't any parking available. And I think that genuinely has to be addressed. So those are my only comments for tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Yes, applicant.
A couple of comments towards that. I will point out again, you keep counting the 72 spaces in the east side lot as exclusive to the ice arena. They are not exclusive to the ice arena. The easement is not exclusive. It is a shared use easement. So you cannot just discount any other use of those spaces when we're doing a shared parking calculation. This is a resort community. People come in, they park at their lodging, they walk. So from what I heard, there was no accounting for, I believe the phrase is internal capture, that is used when you're doing parking calculations for customers of Town Square who aren't driving over to Town Square because they are already parked at a lodging establishment or their residence elsewhere in town. That is why we have shared parking arrangements in this town, where we aren't paving to the maximum number of spaces that you come up with when you do the calculation according to the zoning table. So that is one of the reasons why we have looked at this plan and tried to craft a plan that has adequate parking, but does not end up paving over large chunks of empty land in the center of town unnecessarily.
Yes, I'd forgotten your name,
Christine,
Christine.
thank you.
Christine Triarchis with VHB.
We are the traffic engineers who did the parking study. I just wanted to reiterate on when we talk about the internal capture, when we consider vehicle trips to and from a development, especially that's going to have multiple uses, what we call mixed use, as it relates to vehicle trips on the roadway as well as to parking spaces, we do typically factor in internal capture. There are standard internal capture rates within the industry that we use. They don't qualify specific rates for this exact scenario where there's lodging near a ski resort, and these types of uses. However, they do quantify internal capture for retail and restaurant and office and residential, and those rates during peak hours are as high as 30%.
Time out. Once again, define internal capture.
Internal capture, so
What does that mean?
internal capture is when you have a vehicle who is coming to a site, they are parking one time, and they are there for multiple purposes. So they are parking at one of the lodges here, and then they are walking over to get dinner in the town square. And then they're going to walk over to the Venture Center and use that the next day. You see it also in other mixed use areas where you have office and residential, or office next to a restaurant. So someone will come park at their office, go to dinner at the restaurant there, or grab lunch at the restaurant there, and then leave at the end of the day instead of going out, making an extra trip to another nearby restaurant and coming back.
Which
Okay.
your parking study didn't take into consideration.
We did not. Correct.
Completing the requirements.
The original parking study did not include any internal capture. We wanted to build in multiple factors of safety and present the most conservative kind of worst case scenario. So we did not include any internal capture in the original calculations.
But I'm gonna, while you're here.
Yes, I'll stay up here.
All right, I have to do this more or less ad lib, but isn't it true that the parking study should be done under the conditions of maximum load? That is, in order to know how much parking you needs to determine if all of the activities that are utilizing that parking space are at maximum load. That is, I know very well that, Walmart doesn't build this monster lot because they want it that way. They're not in the parking business, but they have to build a parking space which is sufficient to take care of their maximum load. That is, if there is a hockey tournament at the arena, we know from experience and watching what happens that east side lot loads up, and then there's spillover into the west side lot. Now, if the hockey arena is busy, there's a tournament, there's something going on at town square, the lodges are mostly full.
Mhm.
There's going to be demand in those parking spots, which will exceed whatever you have set aside for the adventure zone. That is, you can't say to people, well, you can't park here because you have to leave those spaces open for the adventure zone. The people who are coming to the arena to legitimately park their vehicles so that they can participate in the hockey tournament, they don't know that, that land is owned by the applicant, and that the applicant wants some of that space to be allocated to his particular adventure zone use. They don't know that. They're going to park there. And my legitimate concern is that when everything is working properly and all demands are being executed, that there won't be sufficient parking for everybody. And then what we're going to have is what we've already experienced in this town is overflow onto the streets. There is no parking on the streets in Waterville. And what I don't want is for the chief to say, if you people on the planning board had done your job correctly and allocated enough parking space for everybody, we wouldn't have these illegal parking on the street. That's the principal concern.
I completely appreciate your concern, and absolutely, when we design a facility, we want to make sure there's going to be adequate parking. That is the reason why in the parking study, we documented 5 weekends in September and October that overlapped with hockey tournaments and the peak fall condition. Those are also going to be the 5 weeks where the uses of the outdoor center and the hockey tournaments and the hockey season do overlap, is in that fall condition with September and October. So that is why those are the weekends that we documented. How much parking is happening right now under peak conditions and documenting that there were still over 200 available parking spaces within the east side lots, within the west side lots.
Right, but that includes, and you've started to talk about it, that is started to do something about those dirt lots. That is, turn them into parking spots. But it's going to overflow, right? That is,
No, clarify here. One of the weekends we documented was Columbus Day weekend, hockey tournament, harvest festival, full lodging. And assuming zero internal capture, that's where we came up with the 165 spaces short. And if you look at what the peer review did, they actually had different numbers that were lower than that. We had just enough spaces. That's assuming zero internal capture on the busiest fall weekend of the year with all of those events going on. So that was the scenario that you are laying out here.
right.
That busiest and there was adequate parking. And we're talking about the possibility, like we said, we could add half a dozen spaces on the other side of the road, pave these lots so we make sure we're getting full utilization out of them. That's what we're proposing after having counted on the busiest fall weekend of the year.
Okay,
Do you have more questions for me?
no, stay there.
Oh, okay. I'll stay here.
And by my calculation, that is, I'm still stuck with this problem of, I'm looking at the chief because we've had these problems. That we had a problem at the golf club. And we know from human behavior is such that people will not walk a step further than they have to. They will not park a quarter mile away and then walk all the way back to the adventure zone if they can possibly avoid it. They'll park wherever it's convenient for them. And that may include on grassed areas or the street. That's when we've had this experience already, and I don't want that to reoccur. And if I did my calculations, I was looking at whether everybody here, all of the businesses, including the arena, are at their max. Is it possible to accommodate everyone? I came up with a shortfall. If we add the 161, which is the maximum load calculated by you, and I think by the peer review, I think that's the number, 161. Where are we going to fit the 161 who might be the maximum number of patrons with vehicles who come here for the adventure zone? After all, it's your customer. We want the customer experience, but parking, you can see how much effort is put into parking on the part of these Disney World and Universal. They make parking a priority. You will park easily, you will be transferred, you will be shuttled, but they make that certain that your experience in parking does not drive you away. That's what the issue is as I see it. Now, where are those 161 people going to park? If all those other businesses are full and they're all pushing into these same areas, and then you add another 161 for the adventure zone.
Well, there are 468 parking spaces in the west side lots
So
total.
they're over toward.
156 of them specifically are within 1,000 feet of the adventure zone.
Yes.
There are others that are well within 1,000 feet of the other uses within town square and the lodges as well. So it is truly meant to be a shared parking system where folks could park as close as they are able to the site that they are wishing to go on. And within those 468 parking spaces, there is adequate extra parking available right now to accommodate that 161, again, worst case scenario.
But that would mean that they would have to be parked over by the Black Bear Lodge. No,
No,
James is shaking his
Black
head.
Bear Lodge people would be parked over by the Black Bear.
Yes,
Yes.
that's going to be where I'm going with this.
And I want to reiterate that it's not, there were 161 parking spaces needed above and beyond the full parking lots. It's that with a busy Columbus Day weekend, with hockey, with Harvest Fest, with full lodging, there were the Adventure Center needed 161 spaces. There were 156 empty spaces, even with all of those things going on. those parking lots were not full on the busiest fall weekend of the year.
Okay.
That is, there were 150 plus empty spaces available during the busiest fall weekend of the year. We want to utilize those 150 spaces, sure. And if you want us to add, if there's some number you want us to add to give a margin of comfort there, but again, that assumes zero internal capture and a low ratio of occupants per car. That was different. It was done in the peer review, came up with a lower number because they used a different ratio. So we had a worst case scenario that filled up the available spaces, but it wasn't 160 cars driving around looking for extra things. And I get that people don't want to walk a certain distance, but if there's an empty parking lot here and they choose to park on the street, I'm sorry, that's an enforcement issue. We can't build parking lot after parking lot after parking lot because people don't want to walk a little bit of a distance. We'll end up paving over the whole center of town to give people to build 500 parking spaces 6 feet away from where people want to be. That's not sensible. I think what we've proposed here is sensible. If what we've proposed here, and again, going back to one of the other points made, what Mr. Hastings sent was that we would revise the site plan. We weren't saying this should be a condition of rule. We will revise the site plan to show what we are proposing to make these changes and additions, the striping, the additional paving, relocating. We'll show all those in a revised site plan. That was part of that we would do that. And so we will show all of that in a revised site plan that accounts for all of this.
Okay, when that happens, then we'll need. What I hear happening is that there will be a continuation of this public hearing to review that site plan.
I don't think there's gonna be major changes, but yes, there will need to be a continuation of the.
And we also have to give people who had not had the opportunity to understand the changes that are occurring. It's our job as a planning board to give the public notice and to give them a chance to do that.
Yes.
To make their comment.
Yep.
Now, I don't want to do all the talk. People, look, this is a planning board. Yet other people have something to say about this?
Yeah, what, are we allowed to speak?
Of course, you're allowed to speak.
Okay.
It's a planning board meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the sufficient accommodations for the paving, the lines, all of that, but those were the things that we were kind of going to deliberate on, right? Now, like, we have and I did some research here on exactly who you guys are, and you guys are one of the top, Liz, you agreed, traffic and parking consultants in the world, or at least in the country. We have in the world.
Yeah.
We have a peer review from our trusted advisors at North Country Council. They agreed that yes, maybe you want to adjust your plan. We would like to see paving and lines. But I think it's important in fairness to the applicant that we have them addressed. We need another meeting. They'll have the site plan, but I think it's time to move forward. And if we have conditions beyond that, then we put that in our approvals.
Okay. Now, what you mean by conditions, in addition to that, that is, we have to have this dialogue and we have to do it in public. And we have to tell the applicant if we have condition ideas so that the applicant has time to respond. And then we go into deliberation and then we decide what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And we can decide then to put conditions on our approval.
Can I ask a question of any attorney that is present?
Go ahead. Come on, Mike. Do it.
I apologize for not writing down your name, but this gentleman said,
David.
what David said is that we cannot put the condition for the parking that was discussed as a condition precedent or opposed to whatever.
Yeah.
And now I'm looking at our attorney and I thought I saw you bob your head, kind of sort of in agreement. Okay?
All right. David, do you want to address this?
No, how about me? I addressed it to her.
Yeah.
My
Okay, that's fine.
counsel.
Yeah, and I
That's
understand
fine.
what David said.
Right.
So,
It is important for us to understand that, and I think it's important for the applicant to understand that as well,
and what
not you.
And what James said is that he understands that they've got to submit a revised site plan to show what they're proposing.
Okay,
Now, the email Phil sent basically says they're gonna do what's shown on the plan, right? The plan shows these parking spots. The email says they're gonna build these parking spots.
Yeah.
I agree that on the plan, there should be a note that says they're going to pave and stripe the parking spots. That needs to be submitted before approval can be granted.
The- revised plan,
Yes,
not this, not us putting it as a
No, I'm
condition,
talking a site plan.
but a revised site plan that takes. Do I have the right piece of
the
paper?
revised
This
site
piece
plan
takes this piece of paper and actually documents it.
that shows the revised, load
That's fine.
area.
No.
Yes, yes.
We can't do it as a condition, otherwise it has to be on the plan. Okay.
You could do it as a condition of approval that those revised plans be submitted with those things on them before they're signed. Yes.
I don't know what that means.
That is not what what we said was, my understanding is the site plan will be revised to appropriately note the foregoing conditions, all of those changes to the parking. Each of which would need to be satisfied prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. That's what we're saying is, we're gonna put it on the site plan, which is what we said. And then if we don't actually build it, you can deny us the occupancy certificate to open the adventure center until we do it, which is
So
frankly,
let me.
normal course of business
Alright, so
for a site plan.
Okay.
My
We're not
understanding.
we're not asking to put this in as a condition.
James, I understand. I'm not a rookie here. Either. My understanding from what you just said and what council is bobbing her head in agreement is that we can put this out as a conditional approval. However, call it whatever you want. However, we can say that if it is not done up to these standards, which we made as a condition, we would not issue you a CO, conditional occupancy, or let you actually open the adventure zone if it is not done and we do not have all of the documentation, everything else, as this would indicate.
I don't know if condition of approval is the right phrase there.
I don't know.
What we're saying is we are going to provide a revised site plan that shows all of these things. And if and when you approve that site plan, is it incumbent on us to execute the site plan as approved in order to be allowed to use the facility? That seems like a
Let's
normal
not-
course of business.
let's not get hung up with words.
I mean,
We
we
all
have looked
understand.
at revising this site plan, but frankly, what we're hoping to come out of tonight is clarity on what those changes should be. So it's not, oh, here's a revision, here's a comment, here's a revision, here's a comment 2 weeks later. We're 30 days out here. So what we'd like is clarity from everyone, not a vote to approve, but some consensus on if what we are laying out here makes sense to you as a group. If there's something different you'd like to see that we think we can do, so that when we go back to the drawing board after tonight, we can get you a revision that is as close to the final revision as we can be, so that we can do this one more time and you can have what you want in order to get to the finish line. That's what we're hoping, is to get as much feedback as we can here, so that there's not 2 weeks later, another set of, oh, by the ways.
Okay, that's understandable. Now, Mike, you got anything more to say?
No, I've needed, we playing with word games, but the concepts. And we all understand what the concepts are and what we have to do to reach our deadline.
Okay, fine, enough. Now, I saw a hand up. Yes, please.
So when I said this is not the stuff of a conditional approval, let me tell you what I meant.
Okay,
We are skeptical that the area exists. So the plans need to be revised to show the dimensions of the parking area, which in turn show the dimensions of the individual parking area. So if you have a parking lot, right now you've got like a circle that says 7 spaces. And if the suggestion is we can put a condition of approval that says we're gonna have 7 spaces. What I'm saying is something different, is I don't know that those 7 spaces are actually there. And for what it's worth, this is almost like the lowest level of fundamental site plan stuff. You have a parking lot. The parking lot is 100 feet by 100 feet. You know that the parking spaces have to be 10 by 20. You know that there's a turning radius to navigate. The engineers have their computers, they type it in. And what I'm saying to the board is get the plans revised to show in fact that the parking exists. Not as a condition of approval,
Right,
but in fact.
right.
And
what we
that's
said.
what I'm saying is you're not doing a conditional approval here. You're saying, just show it to us. It's an easy ask. It's a light lift.
Is,
That's what I was saying.
isn't that what we just said?
Tom, you don't have the
Yeah.
floor. Please, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Paul Chisholm, I'm an engineer with Keach Nordstrom Associates. We're the engineers and surveyors of record. We're the ones who put together the site plan. I don't want to get hung up in semantics. Really, what we're looking for is, like James said, the clarity on exactly that we're going to be drawing something that we all agree we think will work. So if the numbers we're talking about don't make sense to you, that's something we want to hear now. For the record, I would say that we've preliminarily taken a look at these items and we know that it fits within these areas that we're talking about on a very basic layout level, putting in dimensions for parking aisles and parking spaces and things like that. This is something that's already been accounted for before we offered that in the email. Okay, so
Okay, I would like to see your drawing
yes, and
done to scale so that there's no
Yes.
Yes.
if,
If it
ands,
would
or-
be
yes, that-
No, no,
that's what we're
time-
going to provide.
time out.
Absolutely.
I give it all you people a chance to finish. I'm gonna do the same. There were drawings submitted dated, I don't know, 1998 from the
Yeah, the recorded parking plan.
Yes.
Yes, yep.
Booth Creek.
Yep.
Okay, I wonder, is that drawing to scale? Is that exactly what you're doing? Are you gonna make a new drawing?
Yes, we're gonna
Okay,
have
I can put these other drawings aside because I don't have ultimate confidence in them. But if you do a drawing that says, we know, but it is to scale, that this is 10 by 20 and each of those spaces fit exactly on this space that you've allocated. It's an area that you call a parking lot. But as far as, I would like to say it's not parking until it's delineated, until it's paved, until it's lined, and until somebody counts it. Then it's parking.
Absolutely. And yes, to answer your question directly, that's exactly what you're going to see on this revised plan.
All right.
What our fear is that we're going to draw this and all of a sudden we're going to hear that's not enough. You know what I mean? So these
Sure I
numbers
do.
that we're talking about, we just
Yeah.
want to be very clear with you that what you are going to see, we're hoping, and I think we're there together as a group based on the conversation and the dialogue I'm hearing, but that's the clarity that we're really looking for. We don't want to wait and see. If you think there needs to be more, tell us now. If you think there doesn't need to be that much, tell us now. I don't want to do something that doesn't need to be done, and I don't want to underdo it either.
Yeah, okay, but I think it's a step in the right
Yeah.
direction to turn that dirt lot into legitimate parking. That's a step in the right direction. And another question is, are you gonna tear up all of the broken pavement that's out there now? Like, if I were in your position, I wouldn't want to spray white paint on all that broken pavement. I would at least want to redo that and then paint it and then call it parking.
So we will talk about that. We will talk about that. We'll come up with a plan for that. But
Okay, so
at the
we'll
end of
talk
the day,
about it
that parking
at the
lot.
next extension, or not extent, but the continuance of the public hearing.
Yes, correct.
We're not
But I-
gonna do it tonight.
No, correct. But I think what we would like to hear specifically from the board is those extra areas that we're talking about adding in spaces that are really gravel lots now that may or may not have those dimensions that we're also concerned about.
Yes,
If we provide the correct dimensions in those and provide the counts we're talking about, does that sound acceptable to you? That's really the question that we
definitely a
want.
step in the right direction. I can't answer, is it acceptable like right now? I don't know.
Well, I think the question is, would it be acceptable to you? And then the other board members can weigh in on whether it would be acceptable to them. Not a final answer, but I think what you're saying is, seems like we're going the right way.
Okay, it's a board. I'm not the,
No,
everybody
it
here
makes
gets a
sense to me.
vote, that it would be acceptable to us. I think it's a step in the right direction.
And why doesn't everyone else weigh in?
I like it.
It made sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if
true,
this
yeah.
is what we're hung up on, if we get the exact things, don't know what we can ask. To Rob's point is give fairness to the applicant. We can't keep saying, come back with this, come back with this. I mean, obviously we can, but it's not
Okay,
the best way forward.
understood.
Rich had a-
He has his hand up and I see him. I will now give the floor to Mr. Rita.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rich Rita, Chairman of the Select Board. I think all of what's been said about what should be required is perfectly acceptable to the Select Board. However, there is an analysis beyond this I think you still have to consider. And James, I may have misunderstood you, so I'm sure you'll correct me. The Select Board notes that all the parties accept that within 1,000 feet, the maximum distance of parking area can be from its use according to the zoning ordinance without a conditional use permit. There are potentially 156 parking spaces, give or take.
Yep.
I'm not hung up either on a number. We're
No,
close
but
enough.
that's the number
Everybody's
that
close enough.
has appeared, yes.
The tables in the parking study provided by the applicant use parking spaces totaling 468. That is, includes those beyond 1,000-foot radius. And I see the traffic analyst is here and parking study analyst is here and she can correct me as well. This, I think, the Select Board thinks can be misleading. The percentage used of the west side parking should be calculated on the 156 spaces in the west side parking within that radius of 1,000 feet, not the 468. You do not have that calculation, which is critical for an accurate parking use calculation. You should require that calculation. So I guess it gets back to James, where you're talking about is that at the peak, there were still 160. Where were they? Were they all within the 1,000 foot? Not as I read the study. That included the whole 460 beyond the 1,000 foot into what we call the Black Bear parking area.
Mhm.
This is a fundamental question I think you need to address and have that the applicant needs to address.
tried-
So I would add that to this discussion for clarity. Again, I think we all want clarity because we're all looking for, as our attorney said,
Yes,
success.
right. I tried to address that earlier, that the number that was used to calculate the inventory, excess inventory, was based on a number 540. And that you might say that from the point of view of the analysis and the peer review, we could interpret that or say that's an approximation. We don't know that the 540 is actually there. And we consider that to be somewhat of an approximation, but there's lots of area out there. Is that all space or area that you think will be actual parking spaces? And do you think that people from the adventure zone will use them? I think that's the point that you were trying to raise.
I was trying to say, Mr. Chair, that you should be looking at what's usable at the 1,000 foot radius line and inward. The calculations that you received about percentage use during these peak periods
Yeah.
included spaces beyond that 1,000 foot, if I read the table
No.
correctly. Therefore, those percentages are artificially low, and that's what I was trying to get at in terms of clarity when James mentioned that we all know we all agree that there are 161 spaces available. My question is, where?
Hmm.
It's not in the 1,000 foot, I suspect. It includes all the 540, well, the 468 in West Side. I think that needs to be clarified as well.
Can you help us, Christine?
Yes, I can. Liz also has her.
Actually, Liz.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Liz?
So, the first time when reviewing the parking study, I thought the calculation of the 540 spaces, didn't really matter. However, in looking and reviewing the zoning ordinance, it does not say where the 1,000 feet begins measurement. So is it at the property line? Because that drastically changes the 1,000 foot radius and includes all of the 540 spaces. So it's,
But that's a critical
That's-
question.
Oh, of course it is.
Oh, absolutely.
But
yes.
what the site plan drawing shows is from the center of the adventure zone.
Which is
The
what
entrance?
they have chosen as their 1,000-foot radius.
We
So-
accepted that.
And
I
if,
say we,
yep, but it could also be measured from the property line out. It's not clear in the zoning ordinance. Where that 1,000 feet begins, is that the entrance?
I hear an amendment coming.
Yes,
Because it would not,
You have no conditional use permit criteria. So I don't even know how.
Didn't
someone
know that
applies
either.
for a conditional use permit.
okay, here comes the engineer.
Yes, yeah, and to Liz's point, we've tried to take a conservative view on everything. Everything that we've had to consider. That's why you asked for actual parking counts, you've got it. That's why the internal capture rate, if I said that term correctly, was not considered.
Yeah.
The 1,000-foot radius is another example of that. I would agree, the zoning is not clear. We didn't want to be accused of looking at it and gerrymandering the line, but if that's what, we can do, it would certainly include all of those spaces.
Yeah.
So it is a gray zone. Obviously, we're trying to take a realistic approach at this and not try to pull the wool over anybody's eyes here. I mean, I think we're
Okay.
going about this in a very sensible
You
way.
might think
So,
that interpretation, board member interpretation, that the distance, the 1,000 feet that's in the ordinance has to do with where does the patron want to go? And patron doesn't want to go to the lot line, patron wants to go to, and we assumed that we were talking about the adventure zone building.
Mhm.
And took that as the 1,000-foot radius. And to me, that's rational and reasonable.
And they'll do signing and all that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
oh,
haven't,
and
we haven't,
yes,
we haven't
also-
hit that one yet. Okay,
Yes.
first hand was Rich and then,
So I don't. The select board is not accusing anyone of gerrymandering
No.
or trying to deceive anybody. We're just trying to get clarity, as was earlier mentioned. We were working off of the 1,000-foot radius that was provided in the parking study. If the applicant wants to change that to capture more parking spots within a 1,000-foot radius, then of course, in the revision, they could certainly do that. But then I would point out that extra area would also be subject to paving, lining, and signage. So again, these are critical questions that you need to have answered to fully understand what the parking situation is going to be when the adventure zone is up and built and as successful as everything else in Town Square. Thank you.
okay, so I think what we're talking about is the 1,000 feet being from the adventure zone building. And then when we fix the amendment, that it will say words to the effect that it's from the center of whatever it is that we're considering.
But that doesn't apply to this application,
correct.
right?
No,
And-
I mean, in other words, it will leave it the way it is, that
Change it
the
next year.
question is, do we have enough space within this 1,000-foot radius? We're still talking about paved, lined, and we'll throw in signed, because it makes a big difference to anybody who's coming here for the first time and not familiar with Waterville Valley. Signs telling them how to park and where to park. The fact that it's lined will definitely assist in achieving efficient parking. I think Katie has her hand up. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, let Katie talk,
Okay.
she's more.
Katie, go ahead.
Katie Smith, 97 Boulder Path Road. This is a public hearing. And the only public people that are here outside of, well, the
Yes.
residents are
Yes.
Tim and I.
That's it.
That's it. So from a public standpoint, nobody else is having any comment towards this parking. And you keep continuing and continuing, and we're continuing it because the select board has an issue with their parking for their tenant.
Yeah.
The argument would be made, what does an ice arena require in parking? And if they don't have enough parking, they need to figure that out. That is not the responsibility of the applicant to figure out. And we're punishing an applicant because the ice arena doesn't have enough parking that we have seen. And that's their fault. That's their fault. Your other point was that on-street parking is an issue at the golf course. But we set a precedence in town by creating on-street parking for them when we don't allow on-street parking. That we totally, the town dug it up, put signs in, have rocks. So that's a precedence that we've set, that we do allow on-street parking in some places. And then third, we have a shuttle system. There is parking in other lots that are not right here. There is the conference center. There is the mountain that has tons of parking. And if people really love this place that much, they'll park up there and they'll shuttle it down. I just think that we are going round and round because of one person, one select board, 3 members that don't have enough parking for their part. And it's not fair on the applicant. I think you guys had a position to do this site plan thing and keep it moving forward.
Okay,
Thanks.
that's what we're attempting to do. Mr. Select Board.
Rob has-
Oh, I'm sorry. I keep said. Oh, wait, Rob, what is it that you want to say? No,
I'll go at the end. I'll get all the information.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Rob.
So, just to make the point, in the discussion we've had tonight, not once have I or the, council for the select board mentioned, the issue with parking in the east side parking with regard to the ice arena. We fully recognize that, we need to address that, and we're hoping once this site plan application is adjudicated, we will see where we land and then whether or not, we need to, work with the, applicant, the owner of the east side parking, to which we have an easement, which is a property right, whether it would work for us. So we've set that parking aside. We think it's integral, but we've not said we're concerned tonight. We haven't said anything about our parking, with regard to the ice arena. We're more concerned with the overall issue of sufficient parking in that area for a new use, not current uses. Secondly, I can say from experience that with regard to on-site parking, that was a difficult discussion on the select board and with town residents and property owners who are very much against on-street parking. But we felt because the planning board at the time, when it approved expanded uses such as tubing and expansion of a food service establishment in that particular area, made no provisions for additional parking. So we ended up with not enough parking for something that the planning board had approved. And it does involve work. It's not just issuing tickets. We've had to direct traffic. It is a major issue for a law enforcement force, a police force that is the size that we have. And we're in constant discussion with the owner of the property of these expanded uses and trying to fix that. So we're not inclined to want to add more on-street parking when you can here now establish what the adequate parking is going to be in lots that are already designated as parking area, or whether you need to have an additional parking area built on site to resolve this problem. As regards to a shuttle, I've not heard the applicant note that as part of their parking plan, that they will run a shuttle to this parking area. Thank you.
No, I gotta deal with Rob. Rob, I'm sorry.
No.
Go ahead.
Let the public speak
You
before me.
defer, you're all right. You're up now.
Before you guys denied it without whatever the word is, that was a condition that they would put shuttle in.
Yes,
But that was the other application, that's not
Yeah.
this that one. Okay. Well,
We don't
sure
talk
that's
about that one because it never happened.
it. Okay.
Tim, you wanted to say something?
So I'll say it again. We had a pedestrian study that did in 2015. This town made a very vocal and obvious opinion that parking was a not a problem in our town, and it deters from pedestrian use. My major concern here today, as you're not a parking engineer, are you?
No.
You're not a parking engineer, are you? You're not a parking engineer, are you?
No, rhetorical.
You have a
questions.
parking consultant, and we have a parking engineer. We need to take their words and their values to say that we have enough parking spaces. They've said this, we know this, and we don't need to debate this any longer. What we need to do is move forward and get off of parking so that we can have a town that encourage pedestrian use, pedestrian walkways, and make sure that we develop the town that we want to develop as citizens. Thank you.
Rob, you have something to say?
No, well, it was back on a comment you made like 15 minutes ago.
Yeah.
No, it was a question for Liz. So, you had mentioned, well, people of course want to park closer to what they're gonna do. Especially somebody like me, I don't want to park far away, right? But my question for you, Liz, is in our site plans or in our ordinances, that's not something that the planning board could consider. Right.
Not human behavior, no.
Yeah.
If they will all wanna park close, that's.
Yeah, so yeah, my only point being is I think, and our attorney, I don't know, but it seems like we're talking about things that are, hopes, wants and desires. And I don't think that's the planning board's function.
No, I've said over and over again that our
I know.
function is ordinances and state law.
State law.
That's how we make decisions.
John.
John has a question,
Mr. Chair, thank you.
as comment. Go ahead.
So I have a question for Wayne. Okay. Don't be mad.
Come on, John.
How could that happen, John?
So have you thought about, as I look at other ski areas or tourist towns, I see this EV issue a lot. And they're all putting in class 2 charges. Do you have any thoughts about that? And the reason why I asked that is because that would be a designated parking spot for someone who wants to charge their car.
Yes.
Could you comment on that?
I think we've had the conversation where we looked at it in the past, but
Yeah.
couldn't find a partner who wanted to work with us. We tried to. We are revisiting that, and we know certainly it's amenity people want to see. We are looking at ways to provide that. It does come with the issue of, as you said, if it's a designated EV spot, then it's generally not available to someone who's not driving an EV. So you may have empty spots. So it becomes a balance of how many of those do you add? I mean, it's it's not too different from providing, handicap parks. You want to provide enough so every one of your handicapped guests has access to a spot, but you don't want to overdo it, because then the spots that don't get used, right, and are underutilized, and now you have to create more parking elsewhere. So we can certainly look at adding that. My guess is it wouldn't be a number of spots that would make a material difference here in terms of what we might add. I think in the long term, the best result is to have a few of those spots in various spots around. Different lots here at the Welcome Center, things like that. And so that's what we're trying to look towards, how we can get those installed. Again, with a partner that can do that with us. We don't necessarily want to run those ourselves. We're looking to do a partner to do that with, and come up with a plan to have a couple here, a couple there, a couple there, so that we're not, for example, putting a big cluster of 20 in one part of town when you're going to have the EV drivers all over the place. So it's certainly something we are continuing to.
Thank you. I also have one more question.
Go ahead.
No, not be. Okay. Thank you. I have a question for the
There's a
chief.
follow-up EV question. Yes.
All right, okay, Nancy, yeah.
Saying that, as someone who uses those spots, yeah, I think they're really important. And I think they will drive people coming up here if they can actually recharge their car, otherwise they're not gonna be able to get home. I would not consider those spots. In fact, those are going to take up spots. Because somebody uses a level 2 charger should really only be on there for, a certain amount of time until their car charges up. Then they need to get off so someone else can use it. So it's more of a kind of a temporary space.
Okay.
So they need to take that into account. If you're gonna add those in, you're actually gonna have fewer regular parking spots. In the submitted plan currently, there are no EV charging spots proposed, right? So. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, sorry.
No problem,
So
no.
my other question is for the
Hmm?
chief. Cause no one's asking you anything. I gotta get you in here.
Not a problem with that.
I didn't think he did.
So. Correct me on the terminology, but when you have exercises with the fire trucks. You draw water out of the pond, is that a standoff pipe?
A dry hydrant.
Dry hydrant?
Mhm.
Tell me, is this all of this whole development going to be an issue for that to happen?
No, we look at that and work that out within when we do the site plan review. You know, when they build, standard spaces, they take into account, general engineering, they have to account for fire trucks and that sort of thing to be able to have access and, we base it on our swing that's in the fire code. When you look at emergency lanes and turnarounds and hammerheads and that sort of thing, there's a spec that gets applied to.
Okay.
To those, and if we see that there's an issue with those, we catch that in the building permit. Application process.
Engineer,
Thank you.
Yeah, just to address that question specifically, we're actually enhancing the ability of a truck to maneuver around the rink. Actually, the way that it's constructed today isn't up to the spec that he's referencing.
Okay,
So that's going to be enhanced, so that certainly isn't an issue by today's.
and that'll be on the drawing?
That's already on the.
Oh,
Yeah,
all right,
yeah,
okay,
it's already there.
thank you.
and one additional question is that do you design parking to allow emergency vehicles in and out?
Absolutely. So this parking lot is set up for it and they can get in and out of that area. The area that we're enhancing is actually as you kind of turn around and go around behind the rink. So there's going to be improvements to that. It's not necessarily, there's no issue with parking, blocking anything. The fire lane has remained open on the side of the rink. All of those things have already.
Okay,
been
the rink aside.
Yeah.
The west side lot, where we're talking about building new spaces. And some meridians, some islands are going away. That is, when you redo this drawing, you're doing it in consideration of emergency vehicles
So
moving in
if-
and out of there.
We are going to build the new parking lots. And when I say build the new parking lots, the gravel areas for parking now are going to be brought up to the standards that the town has. That's already considered all of those things.
Mhm.
When we're talking about codes and NFPA, that's related to the buildings and proposed uses, not parking areas specifically. Your parking ordinance should account for that. I can tell you that the standard sizes that you have are very typical, and vehicles can maneuver through there adequately.
Thank you.
Okay, Chief, you've looked at those things before and
The reason why, Green Peak has a hammerhead at the end of the street.
Right. Exactly.
Yes.
I have a question for Selectman. The arena, is he a lessee? That is, whatever his name is,
The Hockey Academy,
is the Hockey Academy a lessee?
yes.
Is the lease 12 months?
I'm sorry, can you say that again, please?
Is the lease for 12 months of the year?
It's a 10-year lease, and I believe they're in.
No, what I'm getting at
Yes,
is
all year round.
Yes, I've
Of
read
course.
those.
that the arena, whatever you call it, the Hockey Academy,
The Hockey Academy leases the ice arena from the town, and they have the right to use that arena for either ice events or dry floor events.
Any
12
time of the
months a
year.
Yes.
Yes, that is correct.
right? So that there's, my problem with shared parking is that it works when it's in, stages, or as an example, shift work. You have shared parking when the day shift leaves and the night shift arrives. They use the same parking lot. But if the ice arena lessee has a hockey training camp in August, that could,
Yes,
it is,
and they've had that. They've had tournaments in August They've had a minor league team using the ice arena as well, and as everyone else here knows, there are other events that go on.
So there's concrete floor events
Yes.
as well
Right.
as
Yes.
ice events.
So we would caution that the planning board should not look at just the fall for 4 weekends a year. It should be a year-round consideration on your part.
Right, and Catherine,
You know, we keep bringing up the hockey and also in the hotels and these are the people that are going to be using the adventure center as well. So I think that we talked a little bit about the multiple use spot and then the studies, you know, they tried not to put that in there because they wanted conservative numbers. And well, it's certainly, you know, probably not 50%, but the people that are coming to use it, the adventure center are not just driving up 49 every day. They're already here and they're staying at the hotel. So, and they're walking around. So I think that when we're talking about this, while I share, you know, the parking concerns, we really need to realize that they're multiple use spots. They're not just somebody if I'm going to a restaurant here because they're staying at the Snowy Owl or at Town Center. They've, you know, their kids at the hockey and then they're gonna take their other kids over to the adventure center. Am I making sense?
yeah, I did that.
You know, it's not 100%. Saying is that, you know, we kind of.
The point that I was trying to get at was if there could be arena use at any time of the year. And that if you were to ask the businesses in town what it would be like if that arena were not here, and if those hockey tournaments did not happen, they would say that there would be a significant loss in business. In some of these places,
And the adventure center.
it might be out of business.
People that are using all, you know, a lot of them are here already.
It's one of those unfortunate situations that the ice arena, the land is owned by the town, but it's only the footprint of the ice arena. Everything else around it is owned by the applicant. So you know, it's a compromise problem that we deal with, or at least that the select board deals with. Liz, you have your hand up.
So just to move this forward, does the planning board agree with the 161 spaces being required?
Well,
Can I
that's,
ask that as a board?
Go ahead.
161, does that
Yeah, they
sound
need
like
to know
it's
how many
okay?
spaces to draw.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would agree with. You know,
Because right now they're planning on drawing you 156 spaces in the west parking lot.
Right.
Does that satisfy you? And if it doesn't, tell them now that you want to see 161 spaces, so they will draw you 161 spaces.
okay, where this number 161 came from, peer review, is that correct?
No,
161
the-
is their number.
It's
Peer
from the
review
marketing,
is 150.
maybe they can speak to that, but it's from a market, my understanding is from a marketing study of what they feel like they're gonna, you know, the traffic that adventure center is going to generate. That's not necessarily saying 160 cars are coming up. That's saying that that's what.
The 161 comes from VHB that did the traffic study based on studies of other uses like this all around the country and how much traffic they generate in a peak hour.
Right,
Yeah.
we're trying to deal with this idea of peak.
Can I clarify just on that? The 161 spaces is based on visitation projections that were provided by the applicant. They gave visitation projections on a week by week basis. We used those projections based on an assumption that visitors would typically stay for about 4 hours to get kind of a max load of how many folks who arrive over the course of 4 hours on a peak summer weekend. And then we used a vehicle occupancy rate, which we used a really conservative number, 1.99. I believe the peer reviewer cited 2.8 to 3.2. For this type of use, we used a more conservative number, which would result in a higher parking number. That is how we landed on 161 spaces as the peak demand. And again, did not include any internal capture or shared trips between the lodges.
Okay, was this supported by the peer review? Liz?
Yeah. Yes, it was. We actually came up with a little bit under that at 154 was the highest peak amount of spaces.
So, Mr. Chair.
Okay, wait a minute.
And
Counselor,
we-
have you been sitting here because you want to say something?
Is Liz, are you done?
And we
Sorry.
generated, numbers based on the IAAPA, which is the International Amusement Association Parks.
Right, I
Numbers,
remember that.
and they
yeah.
do it worldwide. And based upon the amount of attractions, they would roughly get about 35,000 a season. Breaking that down and utilizing the ITE calculation, parking spaces at 3 parking spaces, 3 bodies per parking space, we came out at the peak of 154. So, we did a completely separate review of the numbers and came up a little bit under that.
Basically the same number.
Yep, so pretty much,
Yeah.
within 10%.
You still had no internal cap.
Yes.
No internal capture. Nope. And that's 33%?
It's as high as 30%. I've seen up to 30 to 35 for this type of use.
So
So to answer.
is
Liz's question-
156
Yes.
adequate?
Yeah.
To the majority of the board.
Okay, thank you, Christine. Counselor, you were sitting here go ahead.
Right, so if you have 161 people in a 4-hour period of time that is using, and I believe the VHB's analysis doesn't use the east side parking area, because they recognize the east side parking area is full, so they're only looking at the west side parking area. But if you have 161 spaces being used in a 4-hour period of time, that means that there are 0 parking spaces available for town square uses. Does everybody understand that?
It's not, that's a
And
statement.
so if you have,
You asked the question she's answering.
but that's not saying, so if you have people that are staying in a hotel, for example, and they're there for the weekend, they're taking up that parking space for 2 days, say, right? Now, the parking calculation is for the demand on the new use, which is 161. So you're adding that. You're adding that, and it's for a 4-hour period of time. If these same people are staying, if these same people are going to a restaurant, then suddenly they're staying longer than 4 hours. So you have a net 0 available for town square, according to VHB study. I'm not making it up.
Christine?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll
So
take one.
just to clarify, in our parking study, yes, we considered the entirety of the shared parking, all 540 spaces. And we documented what the existing demand of those parking spaces were. We then layered on the additional 161 absolute maximum kind of worst case scenario, additional spaces required for the Adventure Zone visitors. To then project to what a new total future demand would be. That total future demand is still showing an excess capacity within all of those lots combined of over 80 spaces.
And I'm talking about within 1,000 feet. You're talking about within the concept of the entirety
Yes.
of the parking area.
Yes.
So therein lies the difference. So if you're following your ordinance, you need to have these spaces within 1,000 feet. And what I'm suggesting to you, what I think the Board of Selectmen are suggesting, is that that doesn't exist. So that's the issue. And it may be that this report needs to be modified. It may need to be that you need to see the revised plans. But the point I was gonna make that I didn't make is at one point in time, there was a discussion relative to 48 additional spaces on site. And I don't think the board should rule that out. I think they're looking for some guidance from the board. And if the board says 61 is fine, 161 is fine, they're gonna walk away thinking they don't need to provide that contingency space of 48 additional. I think that would be a mistake.
Understand, we're not finished with this.
We don't entirely rule out everything within 1,000, outside of 1,000 feet, because some of that demand, for example, is town square. And town square's shared access to those lots extends beyond the handful of sections of the lot that are within 1,000 feet. There's several lots just outside the 1,000 feet, right across the street from town square. So that's why we looked at the demand across the whole area when we were looking at the total demand, including what was added by the Adventure Zone. And again, I go back to if, you know, what we have proposed here is to revise this site plan. If there's some number of spaces you want to see us, you know, include there, tell us now. So we'll figure that out. But again, we've looked at that 161 includes no internal capture, a very conservative number of occupants per car. If you put 30% on that, 35% on that, that cuts that by a third down to 100. And so, and so we have used the most conservative possible estimates to come up with this number.
Okay, I do understand, but all right, counselor over there did raise this point. As we're trying to cut to the chase, because we do have a busy agenda. Pave, line, and sign, and add 48 might resolve this whole matter.
Aren't we deciding is the 161 good? That's what we're
What was
deciding.
brought up is that 48 contingency is what you're talking about, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
that's-
it was mentioned, so it's on the floor.
No, but we're making the decision.
Yes.
And I think the decision is the 161, which is more conservative than, you know, what you as our advisor have told us. I think we need to make a decision. If 161 isn't good, and I will just echo, you know, a comment that was made, there's only two like experts in parking in this room being represented. One's representing us, one's representing the applicant. I think we need to decide, I mean, you guys can jump into.
No, I'm 100%
Is
on board.
161 good or not? And if it's not, what's the number? I mean, that's what we were asked. I mean, we need to respond.
We asked them to do a parking study. They did one. We came along and said, we have great respect for what you did, all right? You are professionals in the field. However, we feel that it is incumbent upon us, the board, to go out and get it peer reviewed, which is normal things. Again, this is not my first rodeo in this. We had a peer review done. As a matter of fact, it was 2 peer reviews in your document, all right? And they came back and basically said, yep, the parking study that was done is reasonable. You know what? I have 2 peer reviews that said it's reasonable. I have at least highly country, I know them. They're a very highly, well, I've used them. They're a highly qualified entity. They're a highly qualified entity. I think we have to accept that which they're telling us.
Okay, understand.
I would
And
agree.
from the peer review, it was have the west side paved, lined and signed with a caveat of the 161 spaces. You guys have to decide on that. And then with a caveat of if there are parking issues, potentially having that 48 spaces as a backup plan for additional parking.
Right.
If there's documented issues. Yes.
And don't forget, you have the authority to impose conditions such as, but not limited to, monitoring of parking usage to ensure that the need for parking does not exceed projections with the excess number.
Right, the peer reviews, both of them, indicated that there should be, and I use the wrong word, use the word contingency plan. And I think that that is the appropriate word, and I think you're absolutely right. We have to continue to monitor this, and if we, Chief Noyes, Select Board, you, anybody that we feel is appropriate, feel that there is an addition we put in there because a contingency plan, I think we can put in a contingency plan.
So you want to see a contingency plan?
We have to say that a contingency plan, if something, I don't want that, well, I don't want to put in a definitive contingency plan. It'd be nice, it'd be relatively simple to do, all right?
Okay,
But yeah,
the selectman has had his hand up here for the last couple of minutes.
No, no worries.
All right, don't worry, you'll get your moment.
So, 2 points. The first point is, I think people are conflating what the 161 number is, right? Please, explain. The 161 is what you think the peak number of cars are. Is that correct?
For the adventure zone.
For the adventure zone, cars, not parking spaces. And that's the point that the select board is trying to make, that there are other uses already in those parking spaces. So if you say you only have to show 161 parking spaces, you're not capturing all the other uses. That number really is, the number should be, what is the use which was not provided to the planning board? What was the use during the periods that they did study? And no one's disputing numbers here, but the use was based on 468, that they would have X amount of spots available, but that's the whole area. It's not within the 1,000-foot radius. That to me is the question you should be looking at. Secondly, with regard to contingency or additional parking, the select board agrees because of the issue of shared parking, and beyond paving, lining and signing, you do have to look at contingency on-site parking. It seems obvious now with the peak areas we've seen that the parking area, at least on the east side, is full, but we don't know what it is on the west side within 1,000 feet because those numbers were not provided. But you do know potentially 161 cars could be coming. That is the essence of the dispute here, I think. So to say 161 is good enough for parking spaces is missing the point completely. Additional on-site parking should be part of this plan. It is not. I didn't see it in what has been presented, although I haven't seen what was presented in terms of the latest submission from the applicant. There's been nothing given to the select board as the very interested party in parking, which argues for a continuation of this public hearing. But I think in future, we would argue it should be constructed, not contingency, because it's obvious already that there won't be enough parking within that 1,000-foot radius. If the applicant wants to extend it out by moving the center point of it, then that's a different calculation. Thank you.
No, leave it alone. Go ahead, please, James.
I will reiterate that it's something you said before, Bill. We have no incentive to have dissatisfied guests who can't find parking or park on the street and get a ticket from one of Dave's finest. What we have presented, we believe, is a sensible parking plan that provides enough parking for all of these shared uses. The 161 is the most broadest calculation. If we want, we go back and we revise that study to show us a 35% internal capture, that number will drop by 1/3. So I feel like we have a margin of error here. So what I'm asking is, if we go back and revise this plan, we'll show that moved loading zone, we'll get those 6 spaces back, we'll show pavement of those currently dirt lots as they're being used. We may be able to even pick up some additional spaces in there and exceed the number we're talking about here. I'll go back to what I said before. What I want is the consensus here, the direction that is, the board feels like that will address the issues. And if not, please give us a number of what you believe it should be so we can figure out how to add that. I don't believe putting 48 or 96 parking spaces in the field next to the ice arena is a good idea, and I don't think it's necessary. All it's going to do is move some people from parking across the road to parking there. You can have empty lots across the street, and it's going to be a lot more pavement that we've put down. And I don't think that's appealing. And so that's what I'm asking is what we outlined there with some of the discussions we've had here, the other discussions with the engineer and the traffic engineer. If we come back with that, is that along the lines of what the board believes is needed for this plan to move forward?
One of the arguments that I've heard about the additional 48 is that the parking area that's under the greatest load and the greatest contention for parking spaces is the east side lot next to the arena and everything in that immediate zone. That's where the adventure zone is going to be. people looking for spaces to park are gonna wanna park as close to the adventure zone as they can be. That's human behavior. So the competition for parking spaces is going to be right there, the east side lot. And that's where the response to the 48 spaces came from.
Mr. Chairman, could we have a chat, the board and me?
I think that could be arranged. Tim has his hand up. And he wants to say something about.
To your point, you made a point earlier about Disney World and the fact that they want to make sure that their guests are being accommodated with correct parking. You also made a comment about Walmart and Walmart's parking lots. The number one concern that I have as a citizen of this town is I don't want Walmart parking lots in this town. I want to have sensible parking. I want to be able to get to where I'm going. But I also don't want to have the beauty of Town Square ruined by having parking surrounding the entire town square. As we all know, in the summertime, many of us walk to Town Square. Most of us walk to Town Square there within the town because it's a beautiful town to walk in. The last thing that we want is to ruin that site. So I urge you to consider that. We already have 30 to 35% overage is what I'm hearing from these parking studies. That means at our peak time, we're already going to have 30 to 35% of those parking lots unfilled. So we have an unfilled 35% already right now calculated into these studies. So I don't want to see this town turn into Walmart's back parking lot. Thank you.
Okay. Let's get the council's input.
All right, I think though that we have come to a point where we could,
He wants to
No.
talk.
We're
I
gonna
understand,
talk.
I have something else to say, and that is that we're gonna have another
Yes,
extended meeting. That is,
Yes.
we're gonna have to continue this meeting to another meeting where we can give the applicant his answer.
but no, I want to
No.
talk before you send the applicant home. I want you to
What?
send the applicant home with direction
Yes.
to
Yeah.
prepare a revised plan. So that revised plan can be submitted 10 days before your next public hearing. So everyone has it in advance. You have a chance to review it and we can have a public hearing. I don't want him to go home and come back and we have to have this conversation again.
I
He's
agree.
leaving here with a
No,
number.
we-
That's only fair.
I agree.
I agree.
All right.
Would it be easier for us to leave this room than
Yes.
for everybody
Yeah.
else?
Yes.
Oh,
Do
we're
that.
gonna leave.
We're gonna go somewhere.
We're going to your house. Okay. And I'll put the kettle on. Oh.
Use the office.
You're not.